Well, come on, Mopar or no car. I used to own 269 Super Bs.
Right
where
on.
did I put it? There's my Super B tattoo right there. Maybe you can see that.
Oh, right on.
I physically don't have a Porsche tattoo, but I do have a Super B tattoo. I'm all about variety.
All right, welcome everyone to the Autopian podcast. I'm David Tracy here north of Detroit. Of course, Torch in the basement in North Carolina. Beau is somewhere I don't recognize.
I am at home. I am sick at home. I don't have COVID. I've got some other type of flu for some reason. So if I sound crappy today, I apologize. Do my best. We got such a great guest today. That's what's bringing me energy. That's what I'm excited about, because our guest coming up in a few minutes is one of my favorite people in automotive culture, Magnus Walker.
Yes, Magnus Walker from the UK, a clothing designer.
Yep.
And
huge in the Porsche community. That's how most people know him.
Lives in LA. Lived in LA for a long time, and
also
since the 80s. Well, Magnus is the dude, for those of you who don't know, with the long dreadlocks, like way down past his butt. But what he's really known for today is his incredible Porsches that he builds. These incredible custom Porsches with their own design that are completely unique. But Magnus got his start actually in LA. Now, those of you from LA, there's Melrose, which is kind of the cool clothing spot back in the 80s and 90s. I don't know if it is today or not, but back then it was the spot. And Magnus had this store called Sirius. And Sirius back in the day in the 90s, I used to shop there. It was the cool place to go. And he had really just funky, how would you describe it, Torch? How you went to Sirius back in the day, right?
That was a little before my time, but my wife did. And she described it as kind of punky. And she said a lot of the people who were like in the bondage subculture would get stuff there. So it was like edgy stuff. It was kind of edgy.
It was a little bit edgy. And I can see where bondage people would be into it. But like, I wasn't into bondage as much. No, I wasn't into bondage, but I still went there for clothing. But yeah, now that you think, it did have like a lot of like stuff on it occasionally.
Yeah,
buckles.
The subculture that she happened to know of people who went there. That was kind of how she.
There's a lot of vinyl and leatherette.
I think there was I think
leopard
was
skin
important.
fabrics and the such.
Yeah, it was like fun stuff, that you'd buy, and it was exciting.
So he would like sell the hot. Well, and then it was like before Hot Topic became a thing. When Hot Topic was actually pretty cool. He was selling the Hot Topic, and then things really exploded, and that's when they became uncool. So that's probably how he got out of, we didn't, out of it somewhat into Porsche.
About the whole serious clothing thing is he when he was done with it, he decided he was done, and he just kind of closed it down, and it was all on his terms. He didn't like sell it out and have it become something else. And I respect that, actually, because you don't see that often in these kinds of things.
Magnus, if anything, is the anti-sellout. He is the opposite of what it is. And this is why I really love this guy. He does things from his heart. He just does what his instincts tell him to do. He's not wavered by other people's opinions. And I think he's incredibly inspirational. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Magnus.
So if you're wondering why we're talking to a fashion designer, an LA-based fashion designer from the UK, it's because really in 2012, there was this documentary, Urban Outlaw, that really propelled him in the automotive community as a truly prolific Porsche collector, not just someone who owns numbers matching Porsches, but someone who does his own thing with Porsches. And I remember in that documentary, it was a very compelling space that this building he lived in or worked in, or anyway, Urban Outlaw, that was in 2012. Now it's 10 years later, and the Petersen Museum is having an exhibit to commemorate 10 years. And so
this is something very cool about Porsche I want to mention, by the way, too, because when we became a Porsche dealer, I'll never forget it, because I had our RWB build, and I was like really proud of this thing. I loved it. And I had the some of the Porsche executives out. They were, I was touring them around gas. And we're coming up to this, build, and I just know they're going to hate it, right? I mean, it's this incredibly obnoxious, build from this dude from Japan that comes out and literally cuts up Porsches, and So I thought, here they are. They're gonna come in with, highbrowed and looking down upon it, and the exact opposite was true. Porsche came in and just loved the car and welcomed galvanizing, welcomed what we were doing and building custom cars. And I think that's something that's kind of overlooked, that Porsche is this very inclusive community. They're not this really stuffy thing that I had the impression that they might be. Like some brands might be a little like Ferrari. You hear, well, no, there'll never be a pink Ferrari. And that who's the DJ that got in trouble for his what was that Ferrari?
Oh yeah,
I remember that. Was it
the Ferrari? Was it with the cat on the side of it? The Ferrari, that's what it was. And like Ferrari literally said, we're not going to sell this guy cars anymore. I mean, come on, take the stick out of your ass, Ferrari. That's what I love about Porsche. Is like, go for it, guys. Do whatever the hell you want. It's your car. Bring your own heart and soul and your love and passion into your car. Do whatever the hell you want, and we'll appreciate it for what you put into it. That's what makes Porsche cooler than any other brand, or cooler than Ferrari, in my opinion. So anyway, that's and to me, that's also what helped propel what he was doing here. Is that it was not only what Magnus did. It wasn't only just kind of out there, but also it was like accepted by Porsche and the whole Porsche community. So anyway, anxious to hear how he got there.
All right, let's bring him on, Magnus Walker.
It's quite a motley crew we got going here.
Yeah,
we try.
Yeah, all righty.
Magnus, welcome to the Autopian podcast. Thanks for joining us from your garage.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're delighted.
We're excited to talk to you about your Petersen exhibit, Outlaw Gathering, and just anything you want to talk about car wise. We will talk about cars and basically 24/7. So it's you're in good company on that front.
Well, you obviously you're very well known in the automotive community for Porsches. Now, I grew up in LA, and I grew up going to Melrose Avenue ever since I was a kid back in the 80s. And I used to love going to Serious Clothing, and you were the cool thing on Melrose back in the day. And I actually met you backstage at a concert. I don't remember which one it was. We had mutual friends back in the day, and oddly we started talking about, and I'm a Ford guy, and we weren't talking about Fords or Porsches. We were talking about Hemis, strangely. And we were talking about Roadrunners and Super Bs. And then I remember you really getting into Porsche. So I was kind of wondering, did you ever kind of go off into the Hemi area at all, or did you go straight into Porsches?
Well, come on, Mopar or no car. I used to own 269 Super Bs.
Right
where
on.
did I put it? There's my Super B tattoo right there. Maybe you can see
Oh, right on.
I physically don't have a Porsche tattoo, but I do have a Super B tattoo. I'm all about variety. Growing up as a kid, I watched a lot of American TV in the 70s. So, it was everything from Dukes of Hazzard to Rockford Files to Chips. So it was a whole bunch of Americana, Captain America, Evel Knievel, Stars and Stripes. So it only seemed natural to own a couple of, muscle cars. So at one point, I've always owned Porsches, but at one point I had Porsches and muscle cars. It was all about variety. At one point, I actually had a 65 GT 350 fastback Mustang R replica with a 351 Cleveland, a Richmond 5-speed, a Detroit Locker. I had a 67 E-Type Jag. I had 269 Super Bs. I had a Lotus Europa twin cam 73. I had a 79 308 GTB Ferrari. That was all probably 20 years ago. So I've gone through phases of owning non-Porsches. There was a phase when I got rid of everything that was non-Porsche. Every car I just described sort of excelled at one or two things, but the Porsche excelled at everything. But, the Super Bs were a lot of fun because, you could have 4 people in one of those and a trunk full of groceries and stoplight to stoplight. It was always a lot of fun in a 69 Super B. I had 2 of them. One was an F8 metallic green, white interior, 383 4-speed. The other one was a triple back black 440. Never had the Hemi, but this was back in the 90s, pre-Barrett Jackson, when, you know, one of those cars was $3,000 and the other was $8,500 bought at the Pomona swap meet. So, you know, as you know, early 90s, you could pick stuff up cheap. Then Barrett Jackson happened and people were just, you know, uncovering barn find one of one, plum crazy, you know, Hemi Cudas, and, you know, everything went like that. So I've seen this wave happen with Mopars, British cars, and obviously Porsches. But ultimately, I just buy what I like when I want to experience what it is. I've never bought a car as an investment other than what I call smiles per mile. So ironically, I've kind of gone full circle and parked outside. I've got a Series 3 V12 E-Type Jag.
Oh, yeah.
I also have a 75 308 GT4 Dino Ferrari. So, you know, I'm all about variety. So Porsche is my drug of choice. It's my religion, but it's not the only car I have keys to.
What did
That's
you think
absolutely
about,
fantastic.
well, I was just thinking about Porsches and where you grew up in the UK. How do you feel about Hillman Imps, which I always felt was like the closest the UK motor industry ever got to anything really Porsche-like, just being rear-engined and kind of lean and small. Did you like Hillman Imps a lot, or are they just treated with
Hillman
contempt?
Imps are real cool. Ironically, there's a hot rod one that rips around LA and goes to the LA Cars and Coffee in Griffith Park. You know, Hillman Imp, it was not necessarily the most common car growing up in England in the 70s. You know, there were a lot of Ford Capris and Ford Granadas and, you know, Triumph Stags and TR7s and E-Type Jags and all the rest of it. But specifically to answer you, it's a very, very cool car. What I should say is when I lived in England, though, I left England at 19, left school at 15, never had a driver's license in England, never owned a car in England.
Wow.
So, you know, I didn't experience having a car that I worked on with my father. This is a pretty common scenario, right? You grow up, whatever your dad's into, you get into. But my dad was working class salesman. Wasn't like we had a, you know, a garage full of cool cars. Even though I may have been around them, we didn't physically own them. So Hillman Imp for sure a cool car, but you know, the British automotive industry has made a lot of cool cars. That's just, you know, one of 100.
That's very true. And
So when you first got
Stag, I just want to just ask one quick thing. Because you're in LA, there used to be one Triumph Stag I used to see on a regular basis in Silver Lake across the street from, you know, Astros in Silver Lake on Hyperion. There used to be a Triumph Stag that was there all the time. Is there any chance you know about it or have seen it?
I don't know about that Triumph Stag, no.
Just hoping. All right, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I always kind of like the Stag, but I like the Jag XJS even more than I like the Stag.
Oh, yeah. Pretty car. David, sorry, I interrupted you.
Seems to me like you're a bit of an Anglophile.
I had a Reliant Scimitar, so I kind of, I had that strain going through me for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not enough of an Anglophile to actually care enough to get it running.
Okay.
It was running for a long time. I drove that car all over LA.
This is a common theme, really. You know, British cars not running parked in driveways looking cool.
Yeah, mine looked cool in the driveway.
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah.
I've been stranded many, many times, famously in my E-Type Jag on Labor Day weekend at 3 in the afternoon on a Friday on the side of the 10 freeway, waiting for AAA for about 2 hours.
Oh, God.
When it was 95 degrees with no shade, no water. So I've been there. But yeah, I'm still a sucker for E-Type Jag. So
they're beautiful, of course.
Have you ever
I have to tell you, my daily driver, I have a 69 Rolls-Royce Shadow Coupe.
Oh,
So this is the pre-Corniche. From 66 to 71, there were Shadow Coupes. 71 onwards, they called them Corniches. And Rolls sent the Shadow body out to Mullingar Park Ward, who basically did the conversion. So I would say my daily right now is my 69 Rolls-Royce Shadow Coupe.
Is
So
it kind
back to
of
the British thing.
Is it kind of in ratty condition? Because I always thought a silver Shadow in not great condition is an extremely cool thing to roll around in.
Mine's actually fairly decent condition. We have two. Hannah's got a 75, the olive green long wheelbase one. Mine is a two-door black coupe, actually in pretty decent condition. Both of those cars broke down when we test drove them, both of them. Well, actually, mine broke down the day I went to pick it up. Hannah's ran out of gas on the test drive. So, but yeah, we still bought them. We didn't pay any attention to other people's advice. The key to vintage Rolls Royces, because you can pick them up cheap, is deferred maintenance. So once you get on top of what seem to be the three main issues in no particular order, cooling, electrical, and brakes, once you get on top of those and you keep them running, i.e. you don't let them sit in your driveway, you got to keep these things daily. Once you get them daily, and we probably only spent about $5,000 on each one, truth be told, to get them reliable. These things are pretty simple and pretty reliable. Got a whole lot of style. You know, this is going down the road straight at probably 70 miles an hour in a 60s or 70s shadow. That's about all you want to do. You need a big distance in between, big gap, because you don't stop great. But that's it. I love them.
Torque Flight GM transmissions in those things, I think, also, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty doggy. You know, there's no power to them. You know, it's a slush box 3-speed automatic. But the car determines the speed you're going, and, you know, you're just sort of along for the ride.
That's fantastic.
So,
you know, continuing with the British theme that we're on right here.
Yeah. And in the early days when you got to the States from the UK, what were the first cars you had? The very first ones? Well,
as I said earlier, I never owned a car in England. The first car I ever owned, I bought in LA in 1988 for $200. It was a 1977 Toyota Corolla 2TC. I drove around without a driver's license for a little bit. And then when I was 19, I took my driver's license in Santa Monica, passed my test, and drove that car probably for another year until I sold it for $200. So that represented ultimate first taste freedom, i.e. not waiting on people, not riding a bike, not taking the bus. These are all things that, you know, didn't work too well in LA as a kid. Yeah, that was my car, except mine was white.
That's a good looking little Corolla.
Ultimate freedom. I kind of really liked that car. And, about a year or so ago, I thought it'd be cool to try and find a 77 Toyota Corolla, which, believe it or not, is not that easy to find.
Right.
Second car I ever owned, I bought in 1990, was a 1987 Saab 900 SPG Turbo, which, you know, was pretty cool. I still like the Saab SPG. And then the third car I ever owned was my first Porsche that I bought in 1992. So that was 30 years ago, which was a red slant nose 74 911 conversion. Bought that up Pomona swap meet for $7,500, and that was real dream come true. The two first cars were, you know, sort of semi-budget freedom. The $7,500 slant nose, that represented big dream come true moment at the age of 25. So those were the three cars from my early sort of 5 years of being in LA back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And when did you start kind of putting your own design aesthetic on there? When did you start kind of customizing your own car and making it your own?
Well, that came later. You know, bought the first Porsche in 92. 10 years later, started doing track days with the Porsche Owner Club from 2002 to 2008. Probably started, well, first 911 I bought was already customized. That was the slant nose conversion. So I didn't customize it, but it was a 74 911. I bought that in 92, being converted to slant nose wide body turbo look, but still had a 2.7 motor in it. So the first thing I did was, that was all show no go. So I went down to John Williamson Autos in Venice in 92, within a couple of months of buying that car, and had him put in a 3-liter motor, and then went to wider wheels. So I wouldn't say I modified that, but the first Porsche I ever owned was already modified, and I modified it a little bit more. I suppose the second one I bought, which was the car that became 277, I bought that also at the Pomona Swap Meet in 1999. Pomona Swap Meet is the world's greatest place to go for anything you want to buy that's automotive related, whether it's a Corvette, a Beetle, or a bunch of Chevy parts, or whatever it is. Yeah. But you've got to remember, this is all 25, 30 years ago. So it's pre-internet, pre-eBay. You just turn up there with a pocket full of cash and just go, you know, go picking whether it was parts or cars. So
I remember
Pomona Swap Meet still to this day is the greatest place to go. If you're an Angelino. So anyway, second Porsche.
Truly is.
What's that?
I said it truly is the Pomona Swap Meet. You get it still today.
Here's the long answer to your question. The second Porsche I bought in 1999, the 1971 911T, the car that became 277. When I bought that, it had a 2.7 CIS motor in it. Within 2-3 months of owning that car, I saw some real RS Carrera flares, had them welded onto the car, got a ducktail, and turned that 71T into a 73 Carrera look. So That I would say would be the first Porsche I modified back in 1999. So what is that, 23 years ago? Then that car evolved to become the streetable track car. That's the car I joined the Porsche Owner Club in 2002. Did a lot of track days at local tracks, California Speedway, Willow Springs, Laguna Seca, Thunderhill, all the Rovals. That was my streetable track car for the next 6 years, from 2002 to 2008. That car gradually got more modified, but the sum of the parts was it was always basic and by today's standards somewhat antiquated. Still running torsion bars, 22, 28, everything adjustable, but Weltmeister sway bars, not like it's on fancy whammy, coilovers and stuff like that. Gone through a few motors. So that really was where my modification was more from a performance orientation point of view, of just making that particular car handle better, stop faster, go quicker through the corners type of thing, bolting roll bar. And then really, I suppose, what was the road up to leading to Urban Outlaw of me building what I would consider to be sport purpose streetable track cars inspired by the 911R, the ST, the TR, and obviously the RS and RSR. That all happened probably 2008, 9, 10, 11, that period. And then the Urban Outlaw film came out 10 years ago. So that was the gradual road of 30 years of Porsche ownership leading up to Urban Outlaw coming out 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I saw 277, because it really hit me, because I'd never seen a Porsche quite done in that way and in that look. And it really was, it's still gorgeous to this day. And by the way, I love the fact that you started customizing cars on performance. I think a lot of people wouldn't know that, thinking, that you're from a clothing design company, that you wouldn't be as into the performance side, but obviously you are. But when I look at your Porsches, and I look at, back at Serious Clothing, and I see some commonalities and some things that are consistent there. So I'm kind of curious. You mentioned like Evel Knievel, who's also a personal hero of mine, and I did a Evel Knievel truck and things like that. But I was curious, like, where did your design aesthetic come from, and how do you take that design from clothing and now put it into cars? Is it just you just kind of do what feels right, or is there something you're drawing upon?
Organic. I think it goes back to growing up as a kid, watching a lot of American TV and movies, and listening to a lot of American music. In the 80s, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue. I grew up listening to heavy metal, so that's kind of where I guess the punk rock outlaw attitude came from. When it comes to the way I've sort of modified my cars, obviously there's a performance angle of it, small, never big horsepower, just more sort of momentum, but great handling. A lot of cars are on Hoosiers, better grip, better stopping power, shorter braking distance, stiffen everything up, but still make it usable where it's not a full-blown track car that you got to trailer it everywhere and it's too racy for the street. So that's the performance end of it. The cosmetic end of it is sort of this combination of everything I described, this love affair with America, red, white, and blue, little bit of hot rodding thrown in, hence louvers on deck lids and things like that. But ultimately, just adding my own personality. All these elements come in, they go into a blender, you mix it up, and what comes out are the 10 cars I've got on display at the Petersen. But obviously, there's others left behind. But ultimately, for me, I bought things that I was personally interested in and modifying them to reflect my own taste, meaning I didn't say, okay, see that poster on the wall, I'm going to emulate that 73 RSR, the way it left the factory in whatever livery, right? I'm sick of Golf livery, I'm sick of Martini livery, I'm sick of the hippie livery. There's nothing unique about these liveries. They were unique 40, 50 years ago, but I'm not looking to emulate. I may pull some inspiration from that. I'm a big fan of Brumos Racing, the red, white, and blue color scheme. But I'd sort of tweak that red, white, and blue scheme and put it in a slightly different, instead of the stripe that went from the rear fender to the headlight, it became color blocked. So it's just a way of mixing up what I'm inspired by. My area of inspiration really is late 60s, early 70s, the golden age of motorsport. It's everything from Vic Elford in the mid 60s to James Hunt, Niki Lauda dueling for the F1 World Championship in the mid 70s, and everything in between. It's a bit of Americana, it's a bit of British, Rule Britannia vibe going on. but ultimately it's just a reflection of my own individual personality and not trying to emulate something that the factory did. And that theme continues with a lot of what I've done over the past 10 years. These collaborations we can talk about with Hot Wheels and Momo, Mobile One and Nike, and slightly out of the box, but completely familiar to anyone that's, a gearhead on, obviously what I'm building mostly is Porsches and they look pretty familiar, but it's just the little tweaks and details that separate me from all the other great builders out there. That and the fact that this is a hobby for me, it's not a business. I don't build customer cars. I don't buy and sell cars. Occasionally I sell one to buy something else, but it's still a hobby that I would call an out of control hobby, but it's not a business.
Right.
Well, and I think that's why there's so much attraction to what you do, is because it is purely out of love. It's not out of economics. It's not out of showing anybody anything. It's doing what you personally love to do yourself. And people really tune into that. And I think that's why what you do has, caught on so heavily. And now we're seeing this amazing display at the Petersen Museum. So congratulations. I'm sorry, David, you started.
I appreciate that. I mean, the story continues to evolve in the sense of what I've done with the Porsches is not just specifically 911. And the whole point of the UO10, celebrating 10 years of the Urban Outlaw film, was to showcase my diversity and variety of Porsche ownership. So it's front engine, mid engine, rear engine, air and water cooled. So, there's a 924 there, there's a 914 there. And even though the 924 is a Carrera GT, that's kind of a holy grail car, there's a story behind that. The 914 is a lowly 1.7 liter base model, and there's a story behind that. Every car has a story that's on display. So, to me, it's the goal of the Petersen Museum, really, the exhibition, the retrospective, was me moving a lot of what you see here in the garage over to the museum. A lot of people want to come and visit me, which is not always possible. So instead of just putting like 10 cars on display, I wanted to bring a bunch of memorabilia and some of the collaborations and really put together an exhibition that just shows what has happened to my life over the past 10 years and how people have been involved in it, how these opportunities have come up. I have one wall where there's over 20 unsolicited art pieces that people have sent in purely based on 277. It's artwork, it's posters, and that's the relatability of that car, 277. It's stuff that people had sent me over 10 years that are now hanging in the museum. It's kind of like I brought everyone along with me and told the story. Every item has a description, and on every description, there's a QR code that you scan, and I'll ramble on about everything you're looking at, whether it's a 914 or the turbo or whatever it may be. So, for me, it's just a way of really sort of sharing this journey that I've had over the past 10 years. It happened purely organically, and, I've been privileged to do some pretty cool things, really all because of Tamir's film. If his film hadn't come out 10 years ago, I don't think I'd be sat here talking to you guys today.
Okay, so that film, what did that film mean to you?
Well, it's interesting. At the time, I'd never filmed anything. And ironically, I'm in the film location business, meaning I own property that I rent out to production companies for commercial filming, everything from low budget to big budget, TV, movie, whatever. To answer your question, when I got approached by Tamir at the end of 2011, he was a commercial film director, Porsche owner. He'd been following along this thread I had on the Pelican Parts Porsche blog called Out of Control Hobby. And I'd gained a little bit of interest overseas, few European magazines. He reached out and said, hey, I like your story, but I think there's a bit more to it than you're telling. How do you feel about making a short documentary film that was originally going to be 3 to 5 minutes long? And my original thought was literally as simple as this. How bad can this be? I'm going to, make a film, drive some Porsches, and we'll see what happens. We had no idea the impact of what the film would do within the first few months of it coming out, getting picked up by Top Gear and going sort of viral. I mean, Tamir would ask me a question, what does Porsche mean to you? Obviously, I ramble on. He had a great team together who would find the little golden nuggets, the little gems of wisdom that would organically happen. And then he'd stitch it together and create this film, which became a 32-minute award-winning documentary that ended up premiering at the London Raindance Film Festival. So we'd gone from shooting this little independent, self-financed, all on Tamir's end. He flew down on his frequent flyer miles from Toronto, hired this talented crew in LA in February 2012. And then he went back to Canada. I didn't hear from him for 3-4 months. And a trailer came out in June. That went viral. The film got picked up, got accepted into this Rain Dance Film Festival, which I jokingly say is the rainy version of Sundance. We got on a plane, flew to England, premiered the film. A bunch of people came over to watch it. And then it just kind of went viral. And you have to remember 10 years ago, the short independent documentary filmmaking style wasn't as accessible as it is today. You know, it was kind of ahead of the curve of this cinematic story that was told. I mean, the film centers around my love affair with Porsche, but it's not a Porsche-centric film. It's telling my story about leaving school, coming to America, working on a summer camp, you know, just in living life one day at a time and going with your gut feeling. So we didn't know what to expect, but one thing we've discovered 10 years later is the film still holds up. It's still one of the best things I've ever shot, and I've shot a lot of things in the past 10 years since then, but none of them's actually achieved, I think, the organic effect of what that film got across. And it's relatable across a lot of platforms in the sense of I still have people who come up to me, you know, generally girlfriends and wives who say, you know what, I'm not into cars, but my husband, boyfriend showed me your film and I was hooked, and I really get the passion. It's a passion project, really, is what the film is about. And it's related to a lot of people outside of the Porsche world. So, you know, that's a long answer to, you know, Urban Outlaw.
I remember watching that for the first time, and it was fascinating. Obviously, like you said, it wasn't just about the cars. It was about your whole story, your whole style, your whole way of presenting. I didn't realize you were discovered on Pelican Parts Forum. That I did not realize. Yeah,
I'd been on that Pelican Parts Forum. You know, that was before I had a cell phone, you know, so I used to load stuff up on my PC. I'd been on Pelican, I don't know, since 2008, 9, but probably by 2010, 2011, that thread had gained a lot of momentum through the builds that I was doing. It was just a different environment then. It was, you know, there was no Instagram, no Facebook, or if there was, I wasn't on it. You know, so I was purely focused on just sort of sharing the journey of what I was building, right? You know, if you like to follow along type of thing. So it was all organic. It really was. And still to this day, you know, I'm like this one-man army in the sense of I don't have an agent. There's no manager. There's no team behind me. It's me and this. You guys are the perfect example. I get a text from Matt at like 11:30. Do you want to do a podcast? Sure. When? Today, 1? Yeah, here we are. It was that simple.
And thank you.
You know, it wasn't like, let me get back to you in 3 weeks' time, and then it never happens, and I have to get approval and blah, blah, blah. So I'm easy to reach. I'm easy to deal with, I think. I got time. I'm passionate about sharing my journey, and, you know, I appreciate the opportunity for you guys to allow me to tell my story.
This is why people love you, Magnus, because you're real, man, and you're not any of that bullshit. And you know, I briefly met you 30 years ago, and I remember back then you were completely real and down to earth, and just a real genuine human being. Kind of let your heart out, and I think that's why people are attracted to you and what you do, because you've got this amazing design aesthetic. But not only that, but you're approachable and humble, and you're a real inspiration. You know, when I look at what you've done, and you've got this whole thing about kind of just doing things from your heart and what you believe in, and following your instincts on things. And to me, that's very inspirational, and not looking at what other people are doing, but finding it within yourself, and being brave enough to let people see who you are inside. And I think that's incredibly inspirational for everybody who's listening.
Well, I appreciate those kind words and the support. I mean, I don't feel like I've changed in the 10 years. People always say to me, have you changed since the film came out? Well, my hair's grayer. I've got less of it, but I don't really think I've changed. I think maybe more people are aware of what it is I do or what I've done or what I'm about just through the exposure that film got, which led to, you know, some other cool things. Like I did a TED Talk in 2014, which is the most viewed thing I've ever done. And similar type of thing to your podcast today. I get invited to do a TED Talk. I'd never even heard of one. I didn't know what TED Talks were about. I certainly didn't watch them. You know, it wasn't my type of thing. And I would say 99% of the people that have seen my TED Talk, which is almost 10 million views, had no idea who I was, weren't car people, but they're related to this thread of just going with your gut feeling. That's the title of the TED Talk, and doing what you love. Not so much what is predetermined, what you feel you should be doing, because that's what your dad did and your dads did, right? I hear a lot of people saw the TED Talk that went down this path to be whatever it was they thought they were supposed to be, you know, doctor, lawyer, investment guy, whatever. But, it's a classic story, right? They get the education, they get into this career that they're not really fulfilled or motivated or happy by. They might be financially stable, but yet something's scratching away inside because they're not doing what they love to do. And I think for me, the ultimate freedom was coming to America, young at 19, not having anyone tell me, cut your hair, get a real job, be home by midnight, live by my rules. That was the ultimate freedom. Make your own mistakes, do what you love. But because, it wasn't handed to me, that struggle I had to fight, doing the stuff on the boardwalk in Venice, the clothing, which led, it's been a gradual journey of being in America, in LA for 35 years. This didn't happen overnight. Buying my first Porsche 30 years ago for $7,500, that represented, like I said, the dream come true. But it also gave me a sense of achievement and confidence to go, fuck, that dream actually came true. So let me keep dreaming and chasing these dreams, right? Because if that one came true, other ones can come true, right? I didn't necessarily set myself any limits to say, well, I don't really have any education in designing cars, so I can probably never do it right. I modified them, I suppose. But, it's just fortunate enough to find something several times over that I was passionate about doing, which I had no education in, but I was driven to succeed in. That was the clothing design. That led to buying property when people thought we were nuts, buying old buildings in downtown LA. And now it's like, wow, you guys were so smart. Well, not really. We just did what felt right at the time. But the common thread is I never asked other people's opinions on, hey, do you think this is a good idea? I thought it was a good idea for myself. That was all that mattered. I didn't need the validation from someone else to tell me, yeah, go do that. It'd be great. So I suppose it was self-confidence in everything that I've done and ultimately not worrying about pleasing other people. Hence why this for me is a hobby and not a job, why I don't build customer cars, because then I'm married to that customer's taste and expectations and deadline and everything else, right? I'm all about freedom to sort of do what you want to do when you want to do it. And that's how my life has been. It doesn't work for everyone. Some people need structure. Maybe I'm a little more fluid that I can bounce from one thing to the other, but that's me rambling on right now.
Amen,
Okay.
brother. That's all I got to say.
I would like to bring up a controversial topic and I'm going to be outnumbered here 3-1.
Oh boy.
Oh, jeez.
I'd like to talk about the difference. Okay. Which city has the stronger car culture, LA or Detroit?
Well, great question, actually. When I first came to America in 1986, I worked on a summer camp north of Detroit. I took a Trailways bus from New York to Detroit and worked on a summer camp as camp counselor on Lake Michigan. And I would go into Detroit, Greektown, Trappers Alley, went over to Windsor. This was in the 80s. So you can imagine how Detroit was then. And I took that Trailways bus to LA, and I didn't go back to Detroit until 2015, when I actually shipped 277 there and screened Urban Outlaw. I guess it was the Fillmore, the big old theater next to the Tiger Stadium right there. And I made a video in Detroit called Detroit Outlaw. And somehow Iggy Pop provided an original tune to it. And I teamed up with Camilo Pardo. And I did a thing with him. Awesome. And I made Detroit. I made a video called Motor City Outlaw with a legitimate Iggy Pop song attached to it. So this is my experience with Detroit. I've since gone back to the Detroit Auto Show. Well, I went when it was in January, sub-zero, freezing cold, not last week or whatever.
You went to the authentic one, yeah.
Yeah, I went to the real one, So I've always liked Detroit, the Motor City. In a way, it's similar to Sheffield in the sense of former industrial city that had fallen on hard times in the 70s and 80s and is now making a comeback. So I'm a fan of Detroit. I hate to say I've never gone to the Woodward Avenue cruise, and I really want to go to that. It always clashes with that Monterey Car Week.
Exactly.
I'm not really giving you a great answer to your question, but Detroit has great car culture, but LA has 24/7, 365 accessibility to world-class driving roads, ocean, desert, mountain that you can do in a day.
No rust.
And everything you want to do that's automotive related, or everything I want to do, can get done with a 30-mile radius of where I'm sat. Every major car company has a design team that's located or has an office in LA. They may have one in Detroit, but to me, LA is the car culture capital. It's where the most cars are. It's like every manufacturer probably sells more cars in LA than any other major city in the world. The car culture here, whatever you're into, whether it's flat top Fords or Sport Import Tuner or Fast and Furious or Ken Block doing Gymkhana or Canyon Roads to go rip around, or accessibility to world-class roads and racetracks, it has to be LA, hands down.
Amen,
right.
brother. Preach it.
There you have
Preach
it.
it. That's why David's moving to LA, by the way.
True.
Yes,
that's
I
telling,
am.
David.
I will.
Just not soon enough.
Let me
I am
sum it
go-
up this way. All my buddies in Europe start putting the cars away like next month for winter for a couple
Same.
of months.
Same.
And that probably happens in Detroit.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
you know, half these cars don't have wipers. They don't have heat. Doesn't matter in LA.
Yep.
So I'm going to make a couple of defenses for Detroit, just because we have a lot of Detroit.
No one was
listeners.
asking, by the way.
and they're yeah. Every time I go to LA, I have to say, the cars that I see there, the variety is incredible.
Everything.
No
It's
rust.
like NSUs on the street. It's just anything.
I will say what I like about Detroit is there are no rules. Like you can modify your car. You can do anything here. No, there are no inspections, no emission, none of that. It is just you can do whatever you want. And
But
I also
David, usually
pre-1974,
that's
same
pickup
here.
truck That's
True.
rusted halfway, so the bed's coming
Yeah,
off.
You
Usually,
can do that. Yeah. And I also have to say, I actually think that rust has actually, and this is a very weird take, but I actually think rust has strengthened car culture in Michigan. Here's why.
Bonds people together, never sleeps.
Well, that's true. But like, let's just say there's like someone has a 1990 Dodge Caravan in good shape. In California, it's not a big deal. Like every 1990 Dodge Caravan is fine. But a 1990 Dodge Caravan without rust is a show-worthy car. People will show up to our meetups in a 92 Plymouth Voyager van, and everybody will stare at, oh my gosh, this thing is in such great shape. It's incredible. Like that's a car that like you wouldn't
it
necessarily.
democratizes things.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And you can
Great
do a
slide.
trail of rust off the hood of a car, and there's nothing like it.
So Magnus, is there something that you're obviously extremely well known for Porsches, and to me, I've really loved hearing about your different types of automotive passions. Do you have anything kind of new that's kind of itching at you right now, or something that's kind of creating a new kind of passion within yourself?
You mean a new car or a new venture?
A new car? Well, both. I'm curious about both.
Well, last year, Hannah and I bought a 100-year-old house near the Hollywood Bowl. Now, I've lived in downtown LA for 30 years. I've been in LA since 1986, so I'm an Angelina. 19 years in Sheffield, England, 36 years in LA, so I'm 55, right? So I've obviously been to Hollywood a lot, but I'd never lived there. So we bought a 100-year-old diamond in the rough fixer-upper with like 25 years worth of MacGyver deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
It's near the Hollywood Reservoir. We're now walking to
MacGyver.
the Hollywood Bowl. I like projects. You know, I've restored a lot of cars. You know, humans like to collect, right? Guitars, cars, whatever. I enjoy projects. So what we're really sort of digging our teeth into is restoring a 100-year-old Spanish house in the Hollywood Hills, which in a way makes restoring the car seem really easy. So, you know, that's a whole new passion project. You know, we're going to flea markets and antique stores, and we're fighting with contractors, and, you know, we're doing fun, crazy stuff, and we're making it up as we go along. So I'm energized about that. That's a new project. Car related.
So is that home going to have like your own design in it, or you're not restoring it back to the original, or you're restoring it to how you believe it should have been in the period, or new? Like, I'm kind of curious.
It's a combination of, we're keeping a lot of the original. It's all Spanish, so it's arches, and there's a rotunda staircase goes up to it. So we're restoring that with upgrading a little bit, but we're not modernizing. We're adding personality.
Right.
You know, we're adding some flavor, but we're furnishing it with 60s and 70s sort of mod pop Italian sofas. And so instead of making it look like an antique store with 100-year-old furniture and a 100-year-old house, you know, it's a 100-year-old house with mod pop furniture from the 60s and 70s, which is, you know, 50 years old to begin with. But it's all about scale and proportion. I've lived in a loft forever. So big open rooms. This Spanish house in the hills is the opposite. Everything's curved. Yeah. Most of my artwork doesn't fit. Most of the furniture that's in the loft is too big. So it's getting recreative around an architectural environment. You know, to me, cars are a big part of what I do, but I like style. I like design, which is why I loved collaborating with Hot Wheels and various other people do it. Yeah. It's like an extension of the clothing, right? So I talk about the thread of my fiber that is woven together is just creative, stylish things that I enjoy. restoring cars, restoring buildings, designing clothing. These are all creative visual things that I'm excited about. It's what gets me out of bed early and keeps me up late. You know, why I'm awake at 2 a.m. trying to figure out how we're going to do whatever it is we're doing in this house, you know, remodifying all these decks that are all falling down and dilapidated. And we're going to tweak them, make them somewhat period correct looking, but add our own little twist to it. So to me, it's like I've restored buildings before. The building I'm sat in is a 120-year-old warehouse in the Arts District in downtown LA. So I like projects. They really get me engaged. The cars are a similar type of thing on a different scale, but it's all about just staying motivated, staying inspired, and inspiration's all around. It's like when I went to Detroit, I was super inspired by all those buildings, you know, the Grand Central Terminal and all these places, that, you know, all these forgotten gems that have just decayed, and, you know, some of it's coming back, which is great. So I like travel, but right now we're grounded, focused on, you know, restoring and adding our own personality to a 100-year-old building. So the cars come and go in a way. Sometimes I'm super engaged in having to have a project that's a car. You know, I've just gone through this Ferrari, the 75. I'm in love with the Rolls Royce. You know, I'm going through that, the issues that has, you know, so it's variety. It's cars and it's houses is what's sort of driving me, fueling me right now.
Well, I can't wait to see this house if you show it when it's finished. That sounds really fascinating, because I figured you couldn't just put it back the way that it was, and at the same time you can't make it modern either. So I'm really curious how creatively you come up with it. And you were talking about cars a little bit. Is the Rolls and the Ferrari, is that the current thing, or do you have something that's the next thing that you're looking at?
That's the current thing. I mean, the Rolls is still new car flavor, even though I've had it 6 months. The novelty is not worn off. I mean, some cars come and go. Like during COVID, on a whim, I ended up buying a 75 AMC Hornet just because of this great original orange patina. And it was kind of cool, but I never drove it. I ended up selling it back to the guy I'd sold it to for the same price I paid for it, just to create some space. So, you know, one thing that's kind of interesting is, during the discussions with the Petersen about having my own exhibition there, initially I was going to have it for 4 to 6 weeks. I said, I can't live without my cars for more than 4 to 6 weeks. And they go, well, we needed it a little bit longer. And it ended up being a 3.5 month exhibition that started 10 days ago, and it runs through January 31st. So now I'm over the sort of disconnection of not having my favorite toys here. Now I'm looking at it as it's going to enable me to drive the other cars that were stuck on the back row that didn't get driven. You know, so now I see it as an opportunity to drive some of the other cars that may have been neglected. And to talk about the exhibition for 1 second, one of the things that I'm most proud of is all 10 cars that you see on display at the museum were driven to the museum. This generally does not happen. You know, 4 out of the 10 cars hadn't been driven in about 18 months. So that, you know, there were a lot of fuel-related issues, not just, you know, gas that had hardened and fuel lines that were cracked and clogged and injectors and float bowls and needles that were gummed up and all other fuel-related issues. It's a bit of a challenge to get all 10 cars to make that drive from downtown to Petersen, plus to coordinate and make a film without walkie-talkies and without a film permit. And, you know, it came out, the stars aligned with no issues. All 10 cars made it. Headlights worked. No one got pulled over. Everyone made it through the traffic lights. And it was one take. It wasn't like we did it twice. We did it once. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is the majority of cars that you see on display at museums get brought in a trailer and get pushed into the position that they sit in. All 10 of those were driven there. I personally backed them all into the spot where you see them. And that was it. It was like, okay, you know, they're going to be driven there. I'm all about get out and drive. It would just seem natural. Why would I trailer a car to the museum? Like, just drive it there. It's easier, cheaper and easier.
It's true. God.
I bet you replaced a lot of that awful fuel line that has the woven fabric on the outside, so you can't tell when the inside's cracked. I feel like
I mean, there were a few of those issues. I mean, it is amazing what happens when a car gets parked. Forget about flat batteries and flat spotted tires. You know, it's like you go through the system, bleed the tank, you know, but a lot of them had cracked fuel lines. You know, some of them were high pressure. Finally get the fuel pump working, you turn it on, it fires up, there's smoke everywhere. You go, great. And then you smell gas and it's just pumping gas everywhere. And then, you know, you got to start chasing things around. So Yeah, you got to keep them running. And that's the problem I had of, I guess, first world problem, a few too many cars that weren't getting driven.
Oh yeah.
Well, I see you still got some Porsches behind you there, so at least you still have some toys to play with.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite driving car that you really, that's the one, if you had one car to take out into the mountains or wherever to drive
people
along
ask
the
that all the
coast?
time. It's 277 without a shadow of a doubt, the favorite pair of old shoe. It's not the fastest, it's not the most modern, but to me, it's all about variety. The newest car I own is right there. It's a 2014 Turbo S. I bought this car about 18 months ago, second owner. I bought it with 162,000 miles on it. It's now got 172,000 miles on it. When I first got it, I didn't really connect with it. I didn't get out of it and look over my shoulder, and it did everything great, but it was so disconnected, right? Triple digit speed, thought like you were just cruising at 60. And I wasn't in love with it. It was an appliance, and it was pretty generic. As crazy as this sounds, a 991 Turbo S in LA is not a rare car. And I hadn't modified it. But what changed was Hannah and I drove from LA to Moab, Utah, 800 miles. And we took the scenic route. We went to the Easter Jeep Safari to do some off-roading. It took about 12 hours. And when we got there, we weren't beat up. Our backs weren't aching. Our ears weren't ringing. And that was where it finally clicked. This is the Swiss Army knife of all Porsches. If you want to go fast, it's as fast as anything on a public road. If you're stuck in traffic doing 10 miles an hour, for an hour, it's comfortable. If you put 800 miles on it in a day, you're not getting out beat up. I wouldn't want to do that in 277. I wouldn't want to do that in a GT3. But that's where the Turbo S just excels. So the answer to your question is, depending on where I'm going, is the experience of how I want to get there. Like if I want to go back 50 years, I get in, behind the wheel of a car from 1972 or, whatever year it may be. If I want to drive to Moab, maybe it's a Turbo S. So I'm all about variety. And I'm fortunate enough that I put myself in a position where I do have the option of stepping back in time or going modern convenience back to being all about variety.
David just wrote an article about this very concept, about inadvertently choosing a comfortable car, even though aesthetically you may not want to, but it does happen. There's value there. I get it.
Yeah, like I just drive old cars. I that's what I connect with personally. But I ended up with this relatively modern Lexus. I just ended up with it. And I just found if I had to do an errand, the key I would grab would be the most comfortable one. And without even thinking of it, it wouldn't be like a conscious choice. It'd be like, let me just grab that. And it's just the quietest, the most comfortable. And the fact is, like, you can love old cars, but there is still something about, comfort that it does still matter.
When you're talking about the Rolls Royce, that's exactly what came to mind is, there's driving the sports cars, but when you want to like cruise down the boulevard, I mean, taking an old Rolls, I don't know what's cooler than that. And it seems very comfortable.
I mean, we have two of them, his and hers, so we're pretty fortunate, but neither one was an expensive car. Neither one is actually, believe it or not, an expensive car to maintain. Unlike a new Rolls Royce, where someone may look at you like you're a bit of a douchebag, right? In a vintage classic, and I'm talking 1969 and 1975, they're not actually that common on the road. You can go anywhere. If you happen to go to a fancy restaurant, and I don't let Valley Parkers park any Porsche I own, but I'll let them park the Rolls because I know they'll park it out front. They won't actually move it very far, or they'll let you park it. You just give them the key. So to me, the Rolls determines the speed you go at. Everyone, it's a real conversation. Get a stopper at every stoplight. People want to talk to you, engage about the car because it's not a common car. Ironically, you feel like $1 million, but you can pick them up in the high teens, low 20s. So it's actually a lot of bang for the buck. There's a lot of style. At this point, there's a vast amount of comfort and noise isolation. You can squeal tires at 30 miles an hour going around corners, so you can have fun at a slower speed. And people don't expect to hear a Rolls-Royce squealing tires going around a corner at 30. So that's kind of fun. And you can get 3-4 people in it. Willow, the dog, loves it. It's easy to get in and out of. My mum was just over from England for 2 weeks for the Urban Outlaw retrospective premiere. She drove in a lot of cars, but the majority of the cars were Rolls-Royces. And for me, it's one of those things as a kid. I always sort of wanted a roly-poly. And obviously you start looking at them and you realize these things are affordable. They're obtainable. Let's put it that way. You can get a decent 70s Shadow in the high teens. You know, you can't buy a lot of cool car for that amount of money. You can't get much that's fun in the Porsche world for similar money. So in a way, it's a lot of bang for the buck.
Yeah, I like that.
So
about
true.
Shadows. Something about a slightly there in even here in North Carolina, there's a guy out in the country who has a really ratty silver Shadow that's like half primer and it's like a hunk of crap. But the fact that it's a Rolls Royce in that state just makes it even cooler somehow.
I completely agree.
Yeah. I think it's
Well,
great.
especially the kind of older ones. But I love what Jay Leno says about, Rolls Royce is like when you see a Rolls Royce, like most people, you look at the car, but when you see a Rolls Royce, you look at the driver. Yeah. And I always thought that was an interesting perspective. And it's so true, though. Like you immediately focus on who's driving that car. But you're so right. That classic Rolls, affordable, you get all the look, fun to drive, and not have that cost long.
I mean,
so
we take it out to
it.
Home Depot, when we're buying plants for the house and loaded plants up at Home Depot. So in a weird way, especially Hannah's, which is the long wheelbase 4-door, you can get a lot of shit in the back of that.
I'm sure the trunk's got to be huge. Loading up
It's
a bunch of
practical,
lumber and peat moss in a Rolls Royce is just that's a fantastic thing.
But the Rolls, I'm not driving the Rolls to Moab, Utah. I never worried about gas until recently, but the Rolls, I fill it up on a Monday and it's about $150 to fill it up because it's got a big tank and gas is expensive. And if we drive it every day and, you put in miles on it, by Friday, you back down a reserve and you go, wow, this thing just guzzles gas. When gas was 50 cents, it didn't matter. The Rolls, it probably doesn't do 8 miles to the gallon. I mean, Porsches are like that when you pedal to the metal, but the Rolls are not really pedal to the metal all the time.
Man.
Anyway,
that's fun.
You got to pay to play.
Well, with a lot of people, you say, "Oh, geez, so what's next?" But I think Magnus, what's coolest about you is, and unless you've got something planned, is it's about living in the moment and kind of taking life as it comes and doing what feels right. And I personally think that's incredibly inspiring as well. So I guess
it's freedom, because I've never been that person that. I remember at school, you go see the career advisor. Where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? I mean, I don't really know where I'm seeing myself next week, right? So to me, it gives you the freedom to pivot and go whichever way you want to go and not getting locked in to situations long term. So maneuverability is where I'm at. But ultimately, that's freedom. I've said it for years. Freedom's the ability to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. So that to me is where I'm happy. That's where I'm comfortable. I don't need my life planned out. I've had highs, I've had very low lows and everything in between. And, the older I get, health becomes an issue, right? Because you want to stay doing stuff. You want to stay mobile. You want to be able to travel and do cool things. So, health becomes things shift, things that were a priority 10 years ago, like being this goal-oriented collector of having to have all these Porsches, to fit some sort of niche or whatever it was. Once you've gone through it, you go, okay, well, I've done that. What's next? And we're talking about what's next, what's inspiring, and we'll see what else comes up, right?
I love that.
Can we talk about
living in the moment's what it's about?
Can I ask about your opinion on a specific controversial detail on some Porsches that I see right behind you?
Sure.
The fat black rubber bumper guards.
Yeah.
I personally kind of love them, and I know they get derided a lot, and I just want to hear, what do you think of them?
It all depends on the car. To me, the car always determines whether it gets modified or not, in the sense of, whether they're originally, do they serve a purpose? Do they look good? I mean, I take a lot of things off. Sometimes things get left on it. Talking about this car here behind me is a pretty rare car. It's the last MFI 76 Carrera built, so that one's going to remain stock.
I had a 64
911 that would remain stock. The car, like one of the cars that's at the U010 is the 67S. It's a holy grail car, but it's one of the more highly modified cars because it didn't have the original motor. And then to me, it's like, okay, like I was saying earlier, you can do whatever you want with your own car. So the car always determines for me whether it gets modified or not. If it's an original numbers matching car that's kind of pure, I don't mess with that too much, just because there's plenty of others that are not pure and original that have had modifications done already. So those are the
Well,
ones that I choose to modify.
Yeah, amen to that as well. And you know what? Because I completely believe in that. And I was kind of curious because I love the fact that you respect cars if they are original numbers matching, and at the same time, to me, when they're not, like we restored a 55 Speedster, and that was like kind of a holy grail car, but it didn't have a numbers matching engine. So I felt the freedom, like, okay, we can play with this car and create it, you know, the way that we want to do it. But to me, if something has that history, that purity, then you respect that as well. So
Yeah,
I love exactly what you're saying. It's letting the car speak to you and tell you what the car
it
should
always
be.
does. I've got a bunch of buddies that own Speedsters. They all go on these rallies, and I'm always ribbing. I go, you know, they made 4,000 Speedsters. Back in the day, no one cared about a Speedster. This is not a rare car. You know, you guys are all, you know, driving these high-end Speedsters, but it's not like Porsche made 25 Speedsters here. So
Yeah.
I'm always ribbing about, you know, 4,000 is quite a lot of Speedsters out there. But yeah, to me, the car always determines, you know, does it get modified or not? I'm known for modifying cars, but half the cars that are here, you know, the ones that didn't make it to the museum are not modified. You know, they're stock, and sometimes, you know, horses for courses. I got nothing against, you know, the Porsche world's like a big pie. There's plenty of slices. You know, some of those purists, like, you know, they like to put the cars on golf courses and have a judge with white gloves and Q-tips tell them what's right and wrong with it. And that's great. And there's a slice of the cake for people that want to modify and collect. And, you know, maybe my pet peeve are all these guys and gals now getting all excited about ordering special paint to sample color combos. And then they don't drive the car because they don't want to devalue it. They don't want to put miles on the GT3 RS that's paint to sample, but they'll drive it to Cars and Coffee and tell you how special and rare it is. And I always go, you know, the real rare one is the guy that just bought a white one, right? With no options. That's actually the rare GT3 RS, not the one that you've got in whatever trendy color where, you know, a lot of other people have got the same trendy color, but no one drives it. Back to like the 172,000 mile one owner Turbo S, you know what I mean? These cars are built to be driven. Obviously, like I say, you can do whatever you want with them, but I'm not quite as inspired listening to people tell me about their low mileage. I don't drive it because I don't want to devalue it. GT3 RS, but someone who's going to show me a car with a couple 100,000 miles on it, I want to know, hey, these are great stories, right? One of the coolest things I ever did, I did this show with Haggerty called The Big Thing and the Next Big Thing. And one of the coolest cars I ever drove was, and I met the guy before he passed away, was this New York school teacher called Irv Gordon, who held the Guinness Book of World Records for 3 million miles that he put on his 1967 Volvo P1800.
Yep.
And I met the guy probably 8 years ago. And then I actually got to drive the car, Volvo P1800,
I used to have one of those.
documented by
Fantastic.
Volvo,
Yeah.
3 million miles. And to me, it was like, wow, one owner, rebuilt the engine 4 or 5 times. Volvo started tracking high mileage through dealer maintenance in the 70s. By 78, when the car was 10 years old, he put 1 million miles on it. It's like, wow, this guy's so connected to that car. And those are the stories that are emotional to me because 3 million miles, I mean, unbelievable in one car in a Volvo.
It really
you know,
is.
That's what excites me, hearing those stories and getting behind the wheel of those particular cars. You know, back to being about variety and these memorable moments that you can't put a price on, right? You know, nothing's exciting if you're getting, you know, someone's showing you a car with 50 miles on it. It's like, what's the point?
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Magnus, you're incredibly inspirational to me personally. I've got to say, where do we sign up for the sermons? That's all I got to say.
Well,
But,
I think you can get inspired at the Outlaw exhibition until the 31st of January, right, of next year.
Yeah, if you go to the Petersen, it's in the vault, in the Legends room. It's open every day. You can read about it. You can scan a QR code on your phone, listen to me ramble on, telling stories about particular cars and things that are there. And to me, I'm super proud of what's been achieved. I'm super thankful for the Petersen to give me the opportunity to display my cars in what is a world-class facility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people that have gone there are leaving inspired, which is good. You know, I enjoy sharing what it is I've done. And we'll see where this road leads to. You know, I mean, there's a lot of other museums in the world that might want an outlaw exhibition. So for me, it's just another step on my journey of doing cool things with cool people. So if you get a chance,
have
in LA, go check it out.
Porsche talked to you about that at all? Because I could see those cars in Stuttgart.
Well, that's where they came from. I mean, I have this weird relationship with Porsche. I'm not a brand ambassador. I'm not associated with them in any way. Ironically, I wrote a letter to Porsche when I was 10 years old. I talk about that in the film, and they did write me a letter back when I was 10. And then after Urban Outlaw came out, I've got a letter from Porsche dated February 2013, a few months after the film came out, where they talk about seeing the film, talk about the original letter I wrote, and they invite me to go visit them. So that letter that I received from Porsche is now on the wall in the museum above the Urban Outlaw poster. And over the past 10 years, I've done some things with Porsche. Sometimes they invite me, sometimes they don't. But it's just this weird relationship. But I think they realize, I've got that one thing I say it all the time. You can't manufacture passion, put it in a bottle and sell it. You kind of either have it or you don't. And this Porsche thing for me, I'm not growing out of it. I've been into it for 45 years. It's not some trend that all of a sudden I'm doing stuff with Porsche today, but next week I might be, selling you yogurt or something. That's not me. Cars come and go, but this is my drug of choice, my religion, for whatever reason, right? It's not going away 45 years later. It's still there. So, I thought it made sense to put the letter on the wall in the museum, just because it's back to this, do what you love, live the dream. If people connect to it, they connect to it. It's like I didn't seek approval from Porsche. They didn't actually help me get to that point. They weren't involved in the film, but they related to the passion for the brand, which is something I've had for 45 years. Next year, Porsche's celebrating its 75th anniversary, going to be a big Porsche year. Yeah. But I've been into them for 45 of those 75 years. I mean, so, over half the Porsche lifetime, I've been a fan, and I've been a Porsche owner for 30 years. So this is not a fad. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid a few years ago and, get into Porsches because they were cool. I was kind of into them because I liked the way they looked when I was 10 years old.
Does that letter when you were 10?
Not, amen.
Does the letter when you were 10 still exist?
Maybe somewhere. I don't have it. If Porsche really dug deep, it's probably in their archives from 1977. Yeah. It's one of those things that got lost along the way. It's pre-digital, so it wasn't like I scanned it and kept a copy of it.
Sure, no.
I kind of wish I had it, but I don't. So no.
Just curious.
Yeah, there's so many things we have from your time.
I did is the actual car that started my love affair with Porsche, I got to drive. I made a little film with Porsche in Sheffield, and I drove the exact white Martini Turbo that was on the stand at the 1977 London Old Court Motor Show. Wow. I drove it in 2018, so whatever that was, 40 years after the fact. I got to drive the actual car. Epic. So, just
that's circle. Amazing. That how many people get a chance to do that too? That's unbelievable. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was kind of a dream thing for me that yet again sort of happened organically. It just evolved. So, that's the great thing about the car world, really. It brings people together. I can break it down and say Porsche guys are more genuine, whatever it is, but it's not really that. It's true gearheads share the same passion, right? It starts with the love affair, the thrill, the chase, the build, the drive. But ultimately, there's a point where it becomes about the people, right? The car community together. And that was how I've been able to get behind the wheel of certain cars or drive across Australia, or where some of these awesome drives that I've done would never have happened if it wasn't for Tamir Moscovici's film that sort of put me on the map and then opened the door to like-minded, fellow, passionate car culture people that, sure, let's go do some stuff together.
Yeah, we call those people Autopians now that we're doing this this goofy website, because it's all about the passion and love for all automotive culture and all the people that are into it, not just one particular segment, because we all enjoy different kinds of automobiles and respect that love that each one of us have. And, there's a lot of cross love happening there as well. But I just appreciate your passion and inspiration, and quite frankly, what you bring to our culture is just it's quite amazing, Magnus, and it wouldn't be the same without you. So, thank you, sir, for all you do.
I'll make it brief. We're all enthusiasts, right? And I think that's the common bond that brings us together, right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Magnus. Yeah. And for those of you listening, please check out the Petersen Museum's display. And Magnus, is there anywhere else people can go to check out, what you do and your thing?
If you've got a cell phone and you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can find me over there. And the usual YouTube this, YouTube that. But if you want to touch the cars, see them in the metal, get down to the Petersen Museum here in LA between now and October 31st. For everyone else, I appreciate all the support. Thanks for tuning in and allowing me to share my story.
In my opinion, the coolest guy in the automotive collecting culture or automotive culture period, Magnus Walker. Thank you, sir. It's been an honor to have you on our podcast. And
thanks, guys.
Hopefully we'll see you soon at the next show here in LA.
Being fun. Pedal to the metal.
Cheers.
Have fun. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks again.